So we got to do that. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll call the meeting to order at whatever time it is, 6:33 by the cell phone. And rather than go through all of these readings that I typically do, I'll just say that we need to maintain good conduct and that sort of thing. And if somebody has a question, then they need to write it on a piece of paper that's over there on the table as it comes in, as they come in. And then we'll call on them later on in the meeting to address that. If we've got any emails that anybody sent in ahead of time, we will address them. And I think in this case, we're dealing with 3 subjects. So when we finish the first subject, which is the proposal from Hanson, then if there's any questions pertaining to that from the audience or emails, we will address that at that time. Since we've got such a full house here, anyway. And then we'll go into the next phase. So I don't know that there's anything else here that's worthy of pointing out to such a small group. So we'll try it this way, okay? For as roll call, I'm here, obviously. Matt's here. Janet, Carol. Larry Pence is not here, but he said he would try to call in. So I don't know whether he's going to call me or who he's going to call, but maybe nobody. But he's in Virginia or West Virginia, somewhere like that, for some kind of doctor's normal checks. Not that he's got anything wrong, but, you know. Jerry's here, Tom Leahy's here, Diane's here, Mike's here. So we got 8 of the 9 here. All right, so we have no, Tom Hawkins is not here. I don't know that I clarified, or he clarified with us whether he should be or not, so that's okay though. District Attorney Hans Wall is here. That's important. You're the man. We're glad you're here. And then the District Secretary Shirley, so we're only missing Tom and Larry, and that's Larry right there. Oop. Hello?
Hey, Alton, it's Larry Pence. How are you?
Good, Larry.
Started the meeting?
Yeah, we're just about to the Pledge of Allegiance. We're going to count you as a trustee.
All right, I'll just listen to everything.
Okay. We'll leave you on the speakerphone, so if you, or maybe we'll leave you on the speakerphone, otherwise we won't know you're trying to say anything.
That's perfect. Thank you, buddy.
All right, but I'm going to move it out of the way. All right?
All right.
Okay, so with that, then Larry's here, so we've got a full 9. We got a full 9 people.
Yeah.
And we're missing, the only one we're missing, Larry, is Tom Hawquist. Everybody else is here. And now we're ready for the Pledge of Allegiance. So let's do that.
Nice.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So you can go ahead and call up Brian if you want to do that. The purpose of the special meeting, if you remember, in our last meeting, there were 3, maybe I should wait on him to answer, but Not yet. No, but he can, I just wanted him to be available because we're fixing to get into his just as soon as I finish a few introductory remarks. Okay?
Give us just a few more moments or I can call you back. Okay, thank you. Bye.
All right.
He's ready.
So we had a motion to, well, first off, and Brian knows this, obviously, is the proposal didn't get in the trustees' hands until Saturday morning before our meeting on the 5th in the afternoon at 6:30. So that was one concern that everybody pretty much had. And then there were some acronyms used throughout there that was a concern. And then after that, there were more specific questions that some of the individuals had. So with that, the motion was made to delay the meeting and call a special meeting tonight, which is where we're at. So, we were also going to have questions and answers about the grant that Janet proposed in our December the 5th meeting. And I know you've got something prepared for that. So the first thing we'll do is go through the proposal, and then we'll go through the grants. And then we'll have a third item that I added to the agenda after talking to Hans Wall. And that is the process for public information request. Y'all all got an email on Sunday, and so that's what's driving this added to the topic, because I don't think we ought to let something like that hang around. But we'll cover that after. That'll be the last thing we cover. Okay? Now, let's see. We have one public information request, and that's from, we'll be in the Hanson phase at the end of it, and that's from Carl Coca. I don't see him here, but we will cover it anyway. And then that'll give you answers to provide back to him.
Yes,
Shirley?
that'd be great.
Okay. So, go ahead and get Brian on there, and I'll still make a comment or two, but very few comments.
Hi, Brian. Okay, I'm going to make you live. All right, go ahead.
Yep, I can hear you good.
Brian, can you hear us?
Yep.
There'll be a little delay. That's going to be.
Okay, good. We're ready to start with the first. We have 3 agenda items. One is the Hanson Phase 1B, and then we're going to have the grants, and then we've got another subject that just pertains to the board. But what I was saying as an introduction was the reason for the meeting today was because we got the information late. You already know that. You got it to me on a Friday afternoon. I didn't read it till Saturday morning, and I didn't get it to the board till noon. 10 o'clock, I think it was Saturday. And then we had the meeting Monday afternoon at 6:30. So that was a concern. The next concern was the acronyms, a lot of acronyms that we didn't understand what all of them meant and things like that. It just made it difficult to read the proposal. And then the third item we had was some people had questions. So we wound up with a motion that the people would submit, anybody on the board could submit questions, and they would submit them to me, even though it didn't work that way, but that's okay. And then I would submit them to you, and then you would answer them. And then I talked with you about participating on this call, because there's no need in me saying stuff and trying to figure out if there's any other questions, so I wanted to get the thing done and get everybody's questions answered. So specifically, you prepared answers to these questions. They had till Monday to get their questions submitted. And then I talked with you a little bit yesterday, and you submitted the questions back. And at 10 o'clock last night, 10:01 to be exact, after a meeting I was in, emailed them to all of you and asked you to read them before the meeting. So that's where we stand. We had questions from Carol, from Tom, and from Matt. And the others said they had no questions. Doesn't mean that they have an opinion. I mean, they might have different opinions about whether we should go forward or not go forward. I'm not going to judge that. But so that's what I think you did, Brian, was you sent the answers, and you agreed to be on the phone for this meeting to clarify and answer any other questions. So with that, I think I should let you make a few comments and figure out where we go from here.
Okay, well, the main reason I'm on the call is if there's any additional follow-up questions. If the answers weren't sufficient, I could try to expand on them if necessary. But the whole purpose for the phase one was an investigation phase for us to get familiar with the issues at the dams, gain some of the background, some of the history, identify the data that had been acquired from the past, do a site inspection, and coordinate with the regulatory agencies to see what's going to be required for these rehabilitation projects. So we did all that, and toward the end of that study, we summarized everything and put that in a report. And we found that there were some additional items that needed to be acquired before we went into design. The main ones being some additional survey data, additional geotechnical data on the seepage areas, and then an incremental H&H analysis to really define what the design criteria is going to be. St. Johns River Water Management District did not have a specific design criteria for rehabilitation of existing dams. So the only stated criteria they have is for new dams, which would require a full PMF design, which is quite large, quite a bit larger than anything that was constructed there. So through the incremental analysis, we hope that we can provide a justified design that will be significantly less than a PMF. PMF being problem of maximum flood. And we identified all that in our presentation when we summarized the phase one findings. And if you look toward the end of the recommendations in that report, these are basically the items that were highlighted as recommended next steps.
Okay, so what you're saying is if we look at this attachment that you sent, then we get into questions and answers on page 5 of 10. Tom, why don't you pull up, I tried to do this, I don't remember which one it was, Hanson.
You want yours?
Yeah, the Hanson one.
Okay.
There you go. This is, I'm pulling up on our big screen TV that we have now, Brian, the amendment number 1. And so that's page 1. So page 1, if you scan on down, Tom, to I mean, this is the same stuff we looked at last week. And you're saying you didn't change this, right, other than adding the answers after the fourth page? Is that right, Brian?
I couldn't quite make out the question, mainly because of the echo. I hear Tom perfectly. There's a lot of echo coming from Colton.
Yeah. So here's, I guess, this page 5. So this is the first answer: survey of existing dam features right away. Blah blah blah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, there was previous survey available to us that we acquired from the Florida Department of Environmental Protection, and that survey was primarily a topographic survey that was pulled together in support of the emergency action plan. And for design purposes, it did not have the detail that we're going to need to actually do design of the dam. So, one, we need some additional information related to utilities, right away, the tree cover on embankments. We need some additional topo to fully define the dam embankments. I think I covered everything there. So we're just asking the surveyor to go back out and pick that up. The most economical way, at least that makes sense for us, was to reach out to the surveyor that had previously done the work so that they could seamlessly tie the two data sets together. Rather than trying to get into a new surveyor that we had on our team, they would have to go out and do an independent verification of the survey, and that would just add cost to it. So we got a proposal from the surveyor for the additional work.
And these questions, Tom, I think were yours, correct?
Yeah.
So do you accept the answers he's put down here, or you got any further follow-up questions, or what?
I guess this would be a question for the group, right? I mean, I know some of them are these are some of my questions, and I'm satisfied with the answer.
Well, why don't we go through by person and questions and see if they're satisfied with the answers they've got, or they got additional questions. Then we'll let the rest of the trustees offer any kind of questions if they've got any. And then if there's anybody in the audience and or these public information requests, Carl's in particular is the only one I'm aware of, then we'll address that. So some of your, if I'm correct, Tom, some of your questions deal with further design stuff and not necessarily this phase proposal.
Yeah, I was just trying to, at some point, like to see this all on one piece of paper to where, I mean, that's just how I think, but it doesn't necessarily have to be. I can't drive the boat here. So, like I say, we'll have to wait. The way I understand this is we've identified from phase 1 what we're missing, and phase 1B will cover that, and then we can move to a design phase after that. Is that a fair statement, Brian?
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Okay. So I don't have any other questions. I guess we go down to Matt's questions. We'll let Matt comment.
You good with that, Holden?
Yeah, we're down to the bottom of page 6.
Yep.
Which is, I don't know, can you got it up? Yeah, there you go.
So Brian, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
All right, so I'm looking at the top third of page 7, question number 3. First of all, I'd like to say we definitely appreciate you making the effort, your organization making the effort to minimize costs and not expand the budget. but I'm someone that just likes to see things in writing in case the worst case scenario happens. So my question to you is, what if a third meeting is required and you do need to expand the budget, what can we expect to be the marginal cost of an additional meeting?
Okay. Typically what we'll do is we've anticipated the overall effort to do this phase 1B. So, I mean, these aren't individual items that have a unit cost to each that you can just stick a cost to. We can estimate what costs were incurred in phase 1 with our in-person meetings and give you a cost for that. But if we had an additional meeting with the regulatory agency for that specific comment, we would basically try to keep that meeting as brief as possible and adjust the cost within the budget we have. We would not anticipate asking for more money just because of the third meeting was required.
Okay. Would it be possible to amend the proposal to have that in writing? That a third meeting would not incur additional costs?
We can do that.
I would appreciate that. Question 4. I'm not dissatisfied with your answer, but I would like to try to understand it just a little better. Is it typical, is what you're saying, that it's typical to, for this type of design, in the spirit of having a little more conservative approach, that you ignore, that you just assume that the water level is always going to be at the next higher discharge spillway? If that makes sense?
Yeah, what we call the emergency spillway is typically when you look at sizing the facilities for the dam. That's typically where we start with the water surface. And there's several reasons. You could have back-to-back storms where you had a storm event and the water had not receded back down to the normal pool level, and then you get the big catastrophic storm. Or you could have blockage of those pipes either at the kettles or within the pipe, or some blockage downstream. So the typical process for that is not to add the capacity for those low-level pipes when we're sizing the emergency spillway.
So a follow-up question would be, why do we not, and again, this isn't intended to be adversarial, this is just trying to understand the process. Why is there not an additional stage increase assumed for Lake Ryan?
Not an additional stage increase for what was that?
For Lake Ryan.
Lake Ryan. Well, Lake Ryan at the moment has no emergency spillway, so we would have to set one and then analyze it, and we would set the water surface equal to that elevation on Lake Ryan in the proposed condition.
Okay. Moving on down, I'm good with 5. Number 6, again, it's difficult for us to make the decision of whether we would like to have 3 in-person meetings or 1 in-person meeting or 5 virtual meetings without some sort of itemized schedule. Would you please provide that and include that in the document?
You would be looking for a schedule with each individual meeting along that schedule.
I can't. I'm sorry. Can you repeat that?
You're asking for a schedule that would include when each of those meetings would occur, the 3 meetings?
Not a cost schedule. How much, if we want to decide to have 5 meetings or 3 meetings or 2 meetings or a hybrid of some in-person and some virtual, it's difficult to make that decision without knowing what the marginal cost is of each meeting type. Could you provide that for, say, between a number of 2 and 5 meetings of each type?
How many meetings would you like? And we can revise the schedule to accommodate the number of meetings that you want us to take place.
Well, what I'm getting at is if the cost of the meeting is $5 a meeting, I'd like to have 10 meetings. If the cost of the meeting is $5,000 a meeting, I might only like to have 1 or 2 meetings. It's difficult to make that decision without that additional information.
Okay, we were looking at it from the perspective of when is a meeting necessary to convey the information and to present specific data sets to the board for decision making.
I mean, in a perfect world, we would have you at every meeting, but we have to make this decision with the idea of being responsible with the taxpayers' money, the assessment payers' money. So it's tough to strike that balance and pick a perfect number without a cost schedule. Would you please provide us a cost schedule?
I'll have to make an assumption on who would be present in each meeting and where they would be originating from to establish those costs, but I can do that for you.
Yeah, and if you say that only this schedule only applies if you have this person and this person, or up to 3 people, or whatever the case is, make the assumptions that you feel are appropriate to provide the number. And if we violate those assumptions and the number goes up, that's on us. But at least we have something we can work with.
Okay.
And I think that's all I had. Yep, I'm done. Carol?
Are you ready for me?
Yes, the question is the same thing, is you ask questions and you provide answers. Do you understand the answer, want to clarify?
Yeah, well, once I had the document in hand and I took it home and went through it bit by bit, along with all the other documents that I have related to this project, I was less concerned than I was when I got the document. I am surprised because when I went back to this one particular document called the Lake Asbury Dam Municipal Service Benefit District Work Order, which is something that I think Hanson's gave us at the beginning. I believe that they did at any rate. It is a task 1, task 2, task 3, and so on. And the items that we're looking at now to approve, which is the increase under amendment number 1, actually looks like it's part of task number 2. And I looked at the timelines on all of this, and the timelines are all off, but the things that are being asked for in the amendment number 1 are actually identified on this work process sheet that you gave us at the beginning. So I believe in your head, or in your extreme knowledge of dams, you already knew that you needed some of this. I just didn't realize it. And now I see it in front of me. It was already part of your plan, and it just looks like you put it as an amendment to task 1, not task 2. So that also makes the cost of it look more agreeable. And I went back and tried to look at some other studies, and I couldn't find that there was any indication that the information you want to glean out of these 2 additional studies have been given to us by anyone else. And I can only tell you I went through 2 groups of studies and I couldn't find anything. I am interested to know why you are concerned that we might have a sinkhole under our dams.
In the inspection provided by the underwater inspection, they noted that there was significant amount of material that was being removed from the bottom of the dam in front of the pipes. And then they also did a pressure test on one of them, and they noted that a jet of water came out of the pipe pipe embankment further upstream from the outlet. So based on that, they determined that there is seepage along those pipes, and they believe it's primarily due to the grout that was put around the liner of the pipes that's deteriorated and is allowing water in that grout area, which should be preventing water from flowing. But as it breaks over time, it can have some seepage paths in.
Right.
Then also when we did our field inspection, we noticed some saturated areas along the dam embankments on the North Dam, on Lake Ryan, and then some settlement of the embankment material on the South Dam on the downstream face, both near the armored spillway location and then on other areas adjacent to that. So those are all indications that some material is being displaced from within and beneath the dam.
Okay, so I understand why you would want to do that. Moving off of that, as I said, all the things that are in the Amendment 1 seem to be in Task 2. The second thing that I had a question about as to how, and this is, I guess, more to all of us than to you, under the SSMC, which is Sioux Survey GIS, they're talking about they need us to provide them title work on all of this and then review title commitments. I'm sitting here now and I guess, is fairly familiar with what we've got. I don't know that I've ever seen a title commitment on any of this property. Is that going to be a problem? Are we going to have to try to come up with it so that they can do their work? What do you think?
Yeah, at some point between the district and the county, we need to try to identify what the exact right-of-way line limits are so that those can be documented on the plans, and that way we know when we're making modifications in the area, we know whose property we're doing that on. So if we don't know that, if it's been a little bit fuzzy in the past, this would be a great opportunity to get that ironed out and agreed to between the district and the county.
Well, it's definitely fuzzy, I can tell you that. The title commitment, I don't know, we've got a lot of documents that I need to go through, but that I have never seen, and I know we need to get it. Also, they need us to locate all the improvements and utilities as evidenced by above ground features and designates marked by the SSMC. I guess that's going to be something they want us to do as opposed to them doing it.
I think in the reference there, they're only talking about if they're facilities that the district owns and maintains as part of the dams. The utilities that are owned by utility companies that are going through there, those are not up to obligated for you to have any knowledge of. So I think that's what the reference is, and it doesn't mean necessarily going out in the field and spray painting something specific. If you have plans or anything that can identify specific features, I think that's what they were getting at, just the information to assist with what's there. Because it's difficult to know from, just standing on the surface exactly what's underneath.
Right, in order to dig if you had to. Back on page 3, they're talking about optional test holes and the rate that they charge to do that. I cannot tell you that I know what all holes that Takoy and their group dug, but it seemed like we were always digging test holes about something. Has he been given that information? There's a whole study.
Yeah, we're not calling for any additional geotechnical boring right now. We think there's enough data from prior efforts that we don't need any of those additional ones. And the geophysical study is all going to be ground penetrating radar and resistivity testing for the survey. And then for the surveying, that is just to we're just looking to validate the depth of utilities, is my understanding of those holes. It's not part of the geotechnical assessment of the soil.
Well, I was just going by their document. It looks like they think test holes that require a depth greater than 10 feet. I mean, they give me some specs on what they might be digging. So that's why I assumed that they were going to dig holes.
Brian, is that just a template document with boilerplate language used for all of their contracts, or is that specific to us?
I'd have to look into that and get back to you.
Well, it has a fairly good cost to it, so I just kind of really wondered why we were doing it since we already had some, but there may be a very legitimate reason, I just don't know what it is, and that's why I'm asking the question. And maybe you could find that out and get back to us about that, that would be fine. I mean, I don't know at this moment that I think things are necessary or not necessary, so I'm not controversial with what you're wanting to do. I just want to know why you're going to do it and how much it's going to cost us.
Okay.
Just a quick comment on utilities, just from the dialogue I've had with AT&T and Clay Electric. The only buried utilities would probably be at the 3-foot level going to the private homes on the dam. Everything else is poles, with the exception of a water line. And I have no idea where the documentation is for the water line. But I think it's, well, I don't know. But that should be easily measured, because I'm sure it's a straight line pipe.
Basically, also at the end of your task 2, it has Lambda design decision period, and that was supposed to end January or February of 2023. I don't think we're going to make that, but could you give us some idea about that?
Yeah, one of the comments was to erase the reference to any specific month. We're gonna, so I struck that out, and it'll just be, I believe in there were also references to how long it would take after notice to proceed was issued. And so we'll just stick with that sliding timeline. So if we don't have notice to proceed until either the middle of December or the 1st of January, then everything will slide back either 2 weeks or 4 weeks from what we were estimating. So
Sure.
that's why the comment was made to take out the specific months and just leave it as a sliding timeline.
Okay, so when I look at this, on the task 2, it has identify additional data elements, complete additional topographic survey, complete hydrographic survey, perform additional geotechnical investigation. Now, see, that is what we've got ahead of us now. Then, the next part of that is develop 2 design options, prepare technical memorandum, and then we have a decision period. That's what I'm talking about. That is what you called task 2. And that maybe is going to slide, it probably will slide until what, May or June?
Yeah, that would take some additional time. After we get all of the data in, then I think I don't have it in front of me, but I think we had an additional 2 months, maybe something like that. It was stated in the proposal. So that would probably push us out to April, May, sometime around the May timeframe.
Okay, that's what I show. All right, so my questions really were more answered after I read all the documents than when I had the reference document to look at and read all the other documents in conjunction. I got a lot of my questions answered. I'm very interested and I know everybody in this community is interested in when we're actually going to get to a design phase, something we can begin to put our hands on to make decisions with. So that is an important timeline in my book.
Understood, yeah.
And that's my questions.
I have a follow-up question. If we do incur any delay here with our notice to proceed, what's the risk of our contractors being busy and going somewhere else and adding to further delays?
outside contractor? Are you talking about the surveyor and the
Yeah, your
architect firm?
yeah, your subcontractors.
That's always a risk. We could check back in with them, but when we were putting this together, they both said they would be available in January to do the field.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, how about, let's go with around the room, because I don't want to be accused of skipping anybody. But Janet, do you have any questions of Brian?
No, I think Brian's been very thorough. Thank you, Brian.
Okay, Mike?
No, I answered all.
All right. We got Diane at the end.
I have no additional questions.
Jerry Scout?
My question's been answered.
Okay.
I do have one additional question.
Okay, Carol.
Is this still about the document?
I wrote myself a note, that came out of the RFQ feedback.
It came out, this is in my document section at home. This is one of the very first documents I got. I had notes on it, and I just want to know if it's still valid.
Yeah, I don't, Brian, you're at a disadvantage. You can't see what she's got. She's got a fairly, I don't know, what is it, 11 by 17 or something like that, Gantt chart that shows timelines and tasks and all of that. And that was, I believe, what you presented in June, if not earlier.
It was in my earliest documents.
The earliest document would have been the request for qualifications, and then we had you come in, I think, and we kind of conducted an interview with you to determine if there was a fit, and then you had, I'm not sure whether there was another meeting where you had a placemat that had some drawing. It had all of you that were supposed to be here. I remember the one guy from Bergman wasn't available because of the flight problem. But you had that placemat. It also had some tasks listed on it. But then we got into this phase one. Yeah, phase one. So what she's asking, and I think Tom kind of asked it too, is if you took, and we can, some way or another, we'll take a picture or something and get this to you, or I'll look back in the other documents that I've got that would have that same thing that Carol's looking at. And I think that's where we've got to come back and say, okay, we didn't know everything when we started the project. We still don't know everything because we don't have design criteria until we get more, let's call it, agreement with, in discussion with St. John Water Management District in particular, because they're the permitting agency. And so, but at some point, we need to update that Gantt chart that you showed, and I believe it was in your request for qualifications feedback that you gave us. I'm fairly certain of that. Yeah. I like that chart too. I mean, that spells out, I mean, it's changed some, I think, but yeah, but that gives you a roadmap, and it gives you dates and projected times and things like that, and what the tasks are too. So
It does another thing. This gives us something for our community. Our community thinks we're without a plan of action. And this may change, but this is a piece of information that we can hang our hats on. And if we see something changing, we begin to ask the questions, why is this changing? What are we missing? How do we help? So I like the document. I like to have it updated if he needs to update it. But I think this is our roadmap that I was worried about.
yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so did I cover, or did I miss anybody?
Larry,
Huh? Larry, I'm sorry, I couldn't see you.
Larry, are you here? Do you have any questions?
I got you. Hello?
Do you have any questions for?
No, sir. You pretty much answered everything that was asked and that I wanted to hear. I appreciate your time and your effort, so I'm good.
Okay.
Okay, I'm gonna go, are there any other papers that showed up in the basket? Any audience questions? Well, we all got a email today from Carl at 8:33 a.m. I thought he might be present here at the meeting, but he's not. So, and I'm making an assumption that this is a public information request because you can't tell by emails whether they really are or not. So I guess you have to assume they are. He says, District Secretary, please forward to the Lambsta trustees. So I guess he's still trying to run the board, even though he's not on it anymore. You can put that in the response too. It says, as a concerned resident whose residence, one, market value has been projected to be very high. Two, under the right scenario, is subject to a flood inundation of some 6 feet if the SLA, I guess that's South Lake Ashbury. He needs to not use the acronyms. And LR, Lake Ryan dams fail, the residents need the board have full control of the future. That sentence doesn't make sense, but it's not a complete sentence. But does the board agree with the results of the original study? Question. Hanson read some reports. Hanson found no grants. Board paid $117,724. I would have a few comments on that. Does the board agree with the results of the original study? We approved the original study. We're sitting here with a phase 1B, so I would say yes. Now that's my opinion. Anybody choose to differ? Okay, has Hanson read some reports? Phase 1 included 4 different things. Y'all remember that? And that's what was included in this Phase 1 engineering investigation report that they presented to us in October. So there's more to that. They did a lot more referencing back to this Phase 1 engineering investigation report than just read some reports. They had 4 items in the Phase 1, and that's on the website, so we can look it up there. He says Hanson has found no grants. We have been presented with a matrix, and Janet's going to talk about grants after we finish this proposal. They have targeted some grants. They had put together a matrix. It had, what was it, Janet, 9 or so possibilities. So to say they have found none, no, we have no guaranteed grant in hand.
We
But-
have not given them permission to move forward on any grants
Okay,
either,
all right.
which is
So-
most important.
Right.
We did, well, if you read their amendment, they moved forward with the 1, which was soliciting,
Yes,
so that's 1 of 3.
yes. That's solicitation, but it's
Well-
now Aaron Bean as opposed to CAMAC. So
Yeah.
2 steps forward, 3 steps back on
Yeah.
Yeah.
currently.
And the last, he says, board paid $117,724. No, the board has not paid $117,724 yet. Because part of Hanson, or part of the Kimley Horn fees have not been charged. So there's still a balance in that $117,724. Okay, and then he says, Amendment 1B, another study, cost $142,160. It is not a study, it is the recommendations from Phase 1 that were pointed out in, again, this Phase 1 engineering investigation report. That also is on the website. So that would be my answer to that. And then he asked another question, how many more studies and what are the costs? I think that's been addressed in this meeting by Brian's answers on where we're at and what we're doing. with the additional survey, which I wouldn't call that a study. I'd call it a project, maybe. He says study/project. Brian has addressed that with the survey and the geotechnical stuff that he's talking about. So I think that's already been addressed. Can the board fully explain to the lake residents, explain what to the lake residents? I don't even know what he's specifically asking for. So I can't answer that. And then he says, I suggest the board take a minimum of a 30-day, and then in parentheses, 60-day breather to take time and fully understand the critical path of the Lake Asbury rehabilitation. A little more time will not hurt. My answer to that is a simple no. So, any other comments about Carl's email? Matt?
I think it's good to go through that and have the questions on the public record, but that's definitely not a public records request. We don't have to respond to that. He wasn't requesting any documentation for anything that we do. He wanted to know our opinions, which, I mean, we've got 9 different opinions, for God's sake. That's show up to the board if you want to ask the board a question. But the idea of taking the breather and asking for a critical pathway, it's the board's decision whether or not we quote unquote take a breather, but this critical pathway, we're as Brian has mentioned and as has been documented, we're taking an iterative approach, which is not as aggressive on a time schedule frame, but is far more beneficial to us financially, because instead of steaming along as fast as we can, we are taking deliberative steps and finding the most cost-effective solution. And I think that's what's best for our community.
Okay. Now,
Are we done with Brian?
Brian, do you have anything to add, or if you want to correct any of my statements, or then go right ahead?
Everything sounded correct to me. Yeah, I can drop off if there's no more questions, but we just like
Okay,
to thank you for the opportunity and continue to work with you.
What do you say?
Say again, please, Brian.
I said I don't have anything different to say. Everything was correct, and so I can drop off here if you guys need to do some additional conversation about it. And we look forward to continuing to work with you.
Okay, thank you very much for your time. I know you were traveling, but as you and I talked, and it's been beat around a little bit, I think that it is prudent for this board, anytime we have a proposal, that Alton does not make the proposal, that you guys not by face-to-face, but virtual, I guess is what you call it. At a minimum, you guys, when we get into the next proposals, then you guys need to be the ones presenting it, and not me, because I don't do a good enough job of it. So I try, but that is one of the things that Brian and I talked about. While Brian's still on here, Brian dealt with the questions on the grants with Kimley Horn people, and there's some recommendations that Janet will go through on grants and Kimley Horn. I would just say that Kimley Horn, in the proposal from Hanson, they said that they would work with us on 3 grants. They will work with us on their intention is to get us fully funded on grants. They're not going to stop. We may have to pay more money, but their intention is to get us as close to fully funded as they can on this project. And is that right, Brian?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. I wanted to mention that because we are going to go into our next discussion item is the grants, and Janet's going to handle that. She's got the information that you provided from Laura, I believe, with Kimley Horn. So we'll, in a little bit, we'll go on with that. Okay?
Can I ask one more question?
Oh, yeah, go ahead, Karen.
Okay, Brian, when you update this Gantt chart for us, would you be okay if we put it on our website?
Yeah, that would be fine.
Okay.
On the chart, what I would do is put in a pretty solid schedule for phase 1B, and then everything beyond that would be an estimate. So
Yeah.
I'll make sure that that's clear on the revision to the chart.
I think we have to make that clear, but it just seems to me that this would be a big help to our community to feel like they could put their hands on this and have some idea where we're at. Thank you.
Okay? In my opinion, we're to decision-making time on this phase 1B.
Brian on the phone.
Yeah, you can
Get
cut
Brian
it.
back to his family.
Cut him off.
Brian, thank you, and we'll talk, I guess, another day.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're
Good night.
welcome.
Brian, happy holidays.
Bye.
Okay, you too. Bye.
Yeah, I guess, at least, may I speak?
Yes, Tom, go ahead.
Based on everything that I've heard, I think we don't really have any big burning issues, and I think in the interest of not losing our subcontractors, and keeping things moving forward, that I would like to make a motion that we accept this Phase B as it stands.
Okay, we have a motion to accept the phase 1B in a second. Do we have any discussion? Okay, no discussion, so we'll put it to a vote. All in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed by, okay, we've got opposed by, so we've got one opposition. Larry, are you voting?
Yes, aye,
That's an aye? Okay.
that's an
Okay.
aye.
Thank you, sir.
We couldn't see your hand raised, so.
Yeah.
Okay, so the motion carries by 8-1. I will notify Brian before the night's out. I'll just send him a text message, and then I'll have to sign the document and get it moving. Thank you very much. Okay, our second order of business is Kimley Horn. Janet proposed that we look at, and y'all are not in the steel mill, but my printer cobbled. That means it tried to eat the paper. So when I got it undone, and I couldn't get it to feed right, didn't want to print another one. So that's why it's a little bit goofy. But Janet, I'm going to turn this over to you. This was questions that either we submitted directly to you or somebody submitted on their same request with Hanson.
Yes, sir.
And they're all combined, though, I think. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
They're all combined and they're not identified who they're from. So we are specifically talking about the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers grant that we talked about at our last meeting. We're not talking about any other grants at this moment. Okay, so for this particular grant, funding is available for 12 months post-application, and negotiation with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and agreements with the U.S. Corps are provided when the project is deemed appropriate and approved. So what that means is we make application, and keep in mind, folks, with any grant, we fill out the application, we ask for the money. We may get it, we may not. We may get called back to give more of a presentation, either in person or by a Google Meets or over the phone. Different things can happen with different grants, not just specifically this. But the big thing, the big takeaway I want you to have is that we can ask for grants all day long. We can get grants all day long, but it's up to us whether or not once we have that money, once we are approved, whether we accept the terms of the grant or not. Okay, so we don't have to. Somebody could be sitting there trying to hand us $10,000. We don't have to accept it. My recommendation would be yes, but we don't have to. Okay, so restrictions and requirements. They're unknown at this time, but there's presumed that there'll be a maintenance on the project. Most grants these days, and again, I'm going general on you right now, is most grants these days do want to see that we maintain what we say we're putting in. They don't just want to see it be put in there and fall to the wayside. So most grants do say you have to have a proper upkeep and maintenance and a maintenance plan. So that would not be surprising for this one, especially because it's the Army Corps of Engineers. My thoughts when it says, how long does this take? That's not me, Janet Wantage, but that is Laura Wittenberg saying that. Is that they've already conducted the inspections on the dam. They have their own report. So it's probably not going to take that long to get this particular one, but it's not exactly known. This particular grant will cover a lot of the studies that we've already done. We may be able to backdate this to the days of Tukoi and get them to pay for some of those studies if they were used currently. Okay, when would the 50% and 35% be due? Now I've got a glare on the screen so I can't quite see it here. The application and agreement will address the scope, schedule, and budget. However, the project will be on a reimbursement basis. So this is an example of what it looks like. And I'm not going to read that verbatim. Thank you. I'm not going to read that verbatim, but you can see how things are reimbursed with the grant monies versus the matching funds versus
But if
the
you
total
stop,
cost.
if I can interrupt you on that one, if this is an example of the one that we looked at, that you gave us to look at, I thought it said the first 100,000,
Yes.
we didn't pay anything.
Yes, the first 100,000 we don't pay anything.
So that example.
So this is just strictly an example
Okay.
for an 80-20 match. But the first 100,000 on this one is just basically free money. Let's see, what are the targeted points or requirements? It would be determined by the application agreement, scope, schedule, and budget, which may be in the form of reimbursement, which she's already said. Once the project specifics are determined, along with the scope, schedule, and budget, which we're not there yet, then we can work towards submitting the application. So we're not ready to submit the application right now. This particular application could be submitted at any time. It's open. So we have to get our scope, our schedule, our sequence, and our budget down. So basically, I'm going to say we should be there at the beginning of phase 2, or towards the end of phase 2, rather, once we've selected our design. Okay, Kimley Horn will be submitting, but it will be submitted by LAMSPA.
But in the meantime, between now and phase, whatever you said there, the
Phase 2.
construction or whatever, or engineering, then we've still got to get this process going.
We have to get that process going, and they're going to be capturing the data from Brian Wozniak and,
Right.
and the rest of the engineers
Right.
to put into the grant proposal.
Okay.
Okay, and again, that basically the last question is Kimley Horn is collaborating with Hanson for the responses. So what's going to happen, we're not going to get a figure from Hanson and then have to call Kimley Horn and say, hey, fill in the grant on line 8A with, $120,000. They're going to coordinate all of that for the
Okay.
purposes of coordinating that. If we get back, they want to, for example, the Army Corps of Engineers, they want to come and get some more information. They may want to come and walk our dams. They may want to talk to Alton. They may want to talk to, our engineer. We don't know what they're going to want specifically if it's a callback situation. But according to Kimley Horn, they have all their documentation because they did the report, so a lot of this should be skipped.
And this is an up to $10 million.
This particular one, I
what it said.
believe, yeah, it's a very large amount, yeah.
Yeah. That doesn't mean you
But
get 10 million.
it doesn't
but-
mean you'll get 10 million, and then once you get over that 100,000, it's a split. And
Yeah,
it looks like
right.
there's a couple of crazy calculations with it, because one is 75-30 and another is 80-20, depending on how you're using the money. So, that's something we'll have to keep in mind. Yes, sir.
This submittal review call, what, I'm envisioning there's a form you fill out. What's the value that we would get, because I'm sure we're gonna be billed by the hour for that. What's the value of?
Well, we've already paid for 3 different grants, so this would
We
be.
really haven't paid for them yet. They're still in the balance of that,
Oh, well, yes.
first phase.
Yes, so we have 3 that we can use within the first phase. So this would be number 2, because the first one is the appropriations. So this would be number 2. And basically, the submittal review call is that application. You fill out the application, and
Yeah, because I don't know, at least speaking for myself, I don't have any valid input other than, yeah, go for it.
they want to know what the budget is going to be. They want to know what the scope, the sequence, what's the scheduling, some of the applications will even ask how much do you expect your schedule to slide by, so.
Okay, so that's it then?
I have a question.
Are there any, that's what I was gonna ask, are there any questions of any of the board members? And Carol's raising her hand.
Yeah. When I went in and read this grant, the $100,000 that they speak of up front is almost like a due diligence. They come out and they review the project and they pay that $100,000, but it's to decide whether we fit this grant or not. That's how I read it. And then if we do fit it, that's when $10 million comes up where we may or may not get some part of that. So I think it's a great grant, especially when they're going to do the due diligence to figure out if this is right for us or not, and it sure looks like it when you read it. So I'm very much for it, but that's what the $100,000 is for.
All right, other questions? Diane? No? Jerry?
No, it's pretty self-explanatory.
Okay. Mike?
I'm good.
Tom? Matt?
Is there a fee for submitting this? Like some of the other ones?
Not for the grant itself, but for Kimley Horn, there is, and that's part of our scope and sequence that we had voted on. Now, because we do have board members, I'm going to take a slight detour. We have already approved what's called the appropriations. And the appropriations, we took 2 steps forward and 3 steps back, as I said earlier, because we were targeting Kat Kemek and we were working to set a meeting with Kat Kemek because she was our representative. They redistrict us, and now our representative is Aaron Bean. And so we are working to set up with Aaron Bean. And what the appropriations does is Kimley Horn, myself, and Kristen Burke, Dr. Burke, will go in and we'll talk to them and basically beg for money. It's federal dollars. They are doing the federal budget, so we are hopeful that we can go in and do a little bit of begging and come out with a little bit of money. But it's no application process, no nothing. We just have to go in and beg.
Where do we stand with Andy Bean? Have y'all made contact with him? Or?
Kimley Horn was reaching out to him, yes.
I may know somebody who knows him.
Oh, if you do, let's use it, please.
He wears cowboy boots, don't he?
I think she handled his campaign.
Okay, yeah.
She's a part of it.
If you could help us get that
So,
meeting together.
yeah, for the love of God, give that contact info to Kimley Horn, please.
Okay, Matt, I think you had some questions.
No question, just a comment. As I mentioned at the previous board meeting, some strings will come attached. They won't be unreasonable. They'll be spelled out. Usually it's a regulation schedule and a maintenance schedule. But there aren't going to be a whole lot of grants that have this kind of opportunity. So I definitely fully support this.
And Kimley Horn echoed your sentiments exactly.
Okay, then I guess if there's no more questions, then somebody willing to make a motion to proceed, is that's what you're asking for in the last meeting?
Yes, please. I make a motion that we proceed with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers grant opportunity with Kimley Horn.
I second it.
Jerry seconded. Any more discussion? All in favor? Right hand, Larry?
Aye.
Okay, looks like it's unanimous, Larry.
He said aye.
Okay, so it's unanimous, that's good. So you will notify,
Yes, sir.
you'll take care of notifying, go ahead, or?
It will be done tonight.
Very good. Okay. So we've covered Hanson, we've covered the grant, The item I added was a process for public information request. We've already had a little bit of discussion here about public information requests because Matt doesn't think that Carl's is a public information request. I'm confused about that. I've had some discussion with Hans about public information request and the process. As all of you know, on Sunday we got I'm going to say this and then I'm going to shut up, okay? We got an email from Matt that was talking about me, even though he didn't use my name. And he implied that I could be up to and including criminally prosecuted with jail time. What I will tell you is that I have had some discussions with Shirley. We have had several incidents where in the past where it wasn't necessarily a document. Matter of fact, most of the requests we've been handling as in responding to these emails are not asking for a document. They're asking for information. And my problem was Shirley was answering them and wasn't accurate enough on some of the answers. And so I asked her to run them by me before she sent them out. Okay? And that hasn't happened consistently. But in this case, the document was Carl asking for this Phase 1B. But you know what? And I didn't pick up on this either. But from a legal standpoint, Carl specifically in his information that he sent you asking for the document, he said, I want the document presented at the November 5th board meeting. Well, guess what? It was December 5th, so technically, we don't even have to respond to it. You know? Now, that's a technicality, but in a legal type situation, he's out of luck. You know, we didn't have a meeting in November the 5th, all right? But the other thing I'm going to say, and Shirley will take exception to this, is Shirley and Carl were passing information and all kinds of stuff. And she even said in one of her emails to Carl, please don't tell Alton that I gave this to you because I'm supposed to get his permission. So there's a bunch of crap in this whole thing. And quite frankly, I resent the hell out of it. I am totally insulted and...
That's okay, so am I.
Well, not...
Because it's...
I'm talking, okay? So that's somewhat slanderous, and I think it's at a minimum insulting, and I do not appreciate it. And that's all I'm going to say. I have documentation to back up a number of issues there if it comes to that. But having said that, I would, in my next order of before anybody else gets to talk, I asked Hans to investigate all this stuff. He's done it, and he is a lot not slicker. He's a lot more professional and diplomatic and sticking to the facts on these particular subjects. So Hans, why don't you educate us on some of these processes?
All right. Thank you, Chairman. And for the record, as an attorney, I hate being introduced as slick. but I'll take it. No, I'm playing. I'm just messing. Well, after seeing all those emails, I just thought, especially for this meeting, I should do some research into the law just to verify. You know, the law's so voluminous that issues come up, and I think in my head I know the answer, but hey, let me just make sure. So that's kind of what I did. After looking at the emails, the two main issues that stuck out to me were what information needs to be on the website, because I know in one of Carl's emails he mentioned the reports on the website, and then the other is obviously responding to public records requests and specifically deadlines. You know, what's the deadline for doing so? Regarding what needs to be on the website, there's actually a statute for that. There's actually a statute for each type of government entity, whether it's a county, municipality, and even a special district. And so there's a statute, it's 189.069, and it's for special districts specifically, and web-based public access. And believe it or not, with this statute, you weren't even required to have a website until 2015. But when you look at the statute, so there's a difference between what's required by law and then what you maybe just want to put on there just if it helps the community. I will tell you that as far as the statute goes, what's required by law is not really all that much. You gotta have your charter on there. You gotta have your budget and any amendments. You gotta have the audit on there. You gotta have your list of meetings, and then obviously the notice and agenda. That's really all the statute says. Now, there's information. I'm just talking about documents. I mean, there's information that needs to be on there. Obviously, the name of the district, the contact information, the purpose, but I'm just talking about what documents need to be on there because that seemed to be at issue. Now, with that being said, I'm just telling you what the law says. You all can put anything you want on the website that you think may be helpful for the community. But if the question is, well, is there some type of violation of statute if this document or that document isn't on there, I'm just telling you what the statutes say as far as what is statutorily required to be on there. As far as response time, believe it or not, the sunshine laws don't have any kind of deadline for when to respond to public records requests. And I know initially that may sound strange, but I mean, the reason for that is because records requests come in all shapes and sizes. I mean, someone could ask for the minutes from last meeting. Well, that's easy. Someone could ask for anything, and that may take some time. And plus, there may be a document that might need to be redacted if there's something in there that the law says need to be redacted. And so that's why there's no statutory deadline. But there is some guidance from the courts or whatnot. I mean, I can tell you personally, with my line of work, I've had to make public records requests to all types of government agencies. City of Jacksonville, St. Johns River Water Management District, JEA, the DBPR, if you're familiar with them. And I mean, sometimes it's taken weeks or months to get the documents I requested. Now, obviously you can't refuse a public record and you can't unreasonably delay it, but that's all in a gray area. So while there's no deadline, the custodian should respond right away and at least acknowledge the request. Hey, I got your request. We'll look into it. We'll provide you with the documents once they're located. Something like that. The charter for this district does say that the secretary is the custodian, which is fine. Congratulations. And I presume the reason for that is just I don't know. I don't know. But in my head, I'm thinking it's because trustees come and go with elections, right? And so what's the charter going to say? The records custodian is seat 2. Well, what if seat 2 is empty for 2 years? Or what is it going to say? It's the it's the chairman or the treasurer. I mean, all the seats change, and so I don't know. I mean, take this for what it's worth because I'm only speculating. But I presume that it said it was the secretary because that may be a stable force. I mean, I know, Shirley, you've only been around 10, 11 months or so, but I mean, I think in a perfect world you would want to have, okay, hey, you've been here 10 years, you know where all this stuff's at. The trustees come and go, the officers come and go, but the secretary's been here, she knows where the stuff's at. I mean, I'm only speculating on that, but that makes sense to me. Now, I think the issue comes up, okay, well, what happens when you have a new secretary? I mean, the district's been around for decades. Someone makes a records request. You may not know what they're talking about or where it's at or where it's located. So I don't think there's anything wrong with having a policy where if a request is made to the secretary, the secretary forwards that on to the group, to the trustees, and say, hey, just FYI, here's the records request. And then if the secretary needs assistance because maybe she might not know what is being requested or where it's at, well then that's great. We can figure that out. And then also being notified when the request is fulfilled. Okay, I've fulfilled this request by sending these documents. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that policy. I would say the spirit of, obviously, the sunshine laws is public records requests must be complied with. If it is a public record of the entity of this district, then it's got to be made available. It doesn't mean it's got to be made available within an hour, within a day, or within a week. I mean, it's all relative to what's being requested. You know, an acknowledgement of the request needs to be made. But beyond that, there just needs to not be any unreasonable delay. But I'm not going to be able to tell you, specific deadlines because the statute really doesn't have any. So hopefully that addresses the issue. I mean, that was the stuff I researched. My job is just to keep you guys within the law and to explain the law. Yes, Tom?
I have a question, just to clarify in my mind. So I know this phase 1B document just showed up on Friday night or Saturday morning. Carl just resigned, but is he still seeing board email? No. He's been removed?
Yes.
Well,
No. He still has a Lamsta email address, but he is not copied on the board items.
He still can see the email.
He cannot.
Seeing how quickly.
That's what I'm telling you. He's not copied on the board emails. Because when something comes in and I send it out, I have to go in the to and enter each one of you. And he does not get entered in that. It's
Carol, you're the senior person here. I think when Mark McMillan and Debbie Barrett resigned back in September a year ago, I think they were immediately removed from the Lamsta email system. Now, who caused that to happen and all that kind of stuff, I don't know. But they're not supposed to be still active on the Lamsta.
Darla, our web person, is actually the person, I'm sorry, she's the person that pretty much helps us put people on, take people off, and that sort of thing. It was my understanding, and I don't have anything in writing, but it was my understanding that when he resigned, he took himself off of everything by telling Darla, and I think he gave back keys, and
Yes.
I don't know what all he gave back, but he doesn't, I'm not aware that he even has access to the email anymore. I don't know. I've never.
He still has the Lamsta email address.
It may exist, but is he
But he
able to
doesn't
log
get
into
anything.
it?
I do not think he is. Darla's been ill.
That was my understanding too, was that Darla put into inactive status.
Right.
It exists, you can send an email to it, but he doesn't have access to it.
As far as I know.
It's my understanding.
That's
Well-
why I say he's not copied with anything that I know of that goes to the board.
I don't mind.
But regardless, we're not a corporation, we don't have personal things in the emails. We don't have proprietary secrets.
I'll be glad to
no
call
one, it doesn't really, this is all academic, we're just.
Yeah. I'll be glad to call Darla and make sure,
Well,
or you can, it doesn't matter.
It seems like that when we've had people quit the board, there should be a list that says these are things that should be done. Get information back from them that they have. I remember when the district secretary quit, Janet volunteered to get the laptop and keys and all kinds of stuff, But there needs to be, and there may be. If there is, fine. If there's, let's review it and update it. If there's not, then I guess at some point we need to generate one. Because Carl used to say that, and he's probably right, that some of the past people that were on the board had stuff sent to their house instead of coming here to Lamsta, and that they still got information and thumb drives and all this kind of stuff. So that's that, and that you may not be able to get it all back, but there needs to be a kind of a.
My question is, did we follow our own process? It doesn't sound like there is.
It seems like we drifted off the agenda.
Yeah.
Yes.
But my
This agenda?
He's talking about public records, and you heard what he just said about flash drives and papers. Those are physical documents. Those are public records. We want to get those back. As far as shutting off email and communication and getting keys to them.
You're right, Mike. My apologies for my.
We just got this document, it has financial information in it, you know, does that need to be redacted, or does it need to be?
No, that's a public record.
Public record.
As soon as it was sent to Alton, it was a public record.
Whether it was accepted or not. It could be a draft. It's still public record.
If it had his social security number, everything except for the social security number would be public record, if that makes sense.
I have a question, Hans. In looking up public records, like 4 or 5 months ago, I found a form that is supposed to be used when you're requesting a public record. I think it's just a standard form. Did you run into that in your investigation?
I believe that is just an entity by entity procedure. To my knowledge, and I don't want to misspeak, so I don't know 100%, but to my knowledge, there's not a statewide records request form.
Well, and I can pipe in here just because I've had, 5 years of equals. I've had 6 public records trainings at this point. It's getting ad nauseum, but basically a public records request is someone passing you on the sidewalk that says, hey, I understand you work for Lambda, I want this record. Here's my phone number. You don't need their name, you don't need their address, you need just know what they want and how to communicate them. And if it's gonna cost us money, if we have to make copies, or if it's gonna cost the secretary half an hour of her time, we need a check. But before we do anything.
Yeah.
Beyond that, we don't need any information. It's a valid public records request.
It can be anonymous.
You were on the street and I said to you, Matt, I want blah, 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 blah. Now, I told you, she's responsible.
Gotta tell
It's
me.
my responsibility to either provide it to you directly or to go send it to her.
Go to her.
Yes.
So you would never answer it really yourself. You would go to Shirley, because if that's going to be the process, that's how we have to follow it.
I'm good with that. I'm good with that.
Because otherwise, I could get a public request and maybe I will, maybe I won't respond to it. Where if it all goes to Shirley or our district secretary, she's a focal point.
Yeah, no, I agree with that, but the penalties in the statute would apply. They wouldn't apply to her if you ignored it. It would apply just to you. Yeah.
But we're saying I did it, but I know enough to know that I'm not the person who's going to answer it. I pass it on to Shirley.
Yeah, and 90% of the time, you're not going to have the information. She's going to have it. Unless it was an email that just had that it's an attachment that was sent to everybody, you're not going to have most of the things needed to fulfill the request.
Or if I did, I could send that to Shirley, because I think Shirley should be our focal point.
Agreed.
Yeah.
But if Joe Blow stops me on the street, I'm obligated to follow the process.
As an officer of,
Yeah, sure.
yes, as a public servant.
You say, well, if you want it, call Shirley.
I'd like to get Hans's take on that, please. Somebody randomly stops you on the street, so everywhere I go, I'm a target, and you know, is there a line, or are you just fair game anywhere you show up, whoever you are? So,
Well,
would you break that down?
The penalties are for, liability is where you either refuse access or you knowingly withhold access. So you hide a document, you destroy it, or you refuse access. I don't, Matt can tell us if in his training he's heard something different. But I think that if someone were to come up to you and say, in your example, hey, I want this document, and you say, okay, well, the way you get documents from the district is you contact the secretary, you can go to the website, here's the district information. I think that would comply.
That would be my initial response.
Yeah. Now, if Matt has heard something different, I don't want to speak for anything that he's heard differently, but
I think that would probably serve the purpose, because you're not intentionally saying, I'm not going to answer you, I'm going to ignore you. you're facilitating the request at that point.
Right. The penalties are refusal or withholding. And so if you're helping, then that's fine. But to your point, Carol, I mean, that form, it's meant to, it's like what Matt's saying basically is it's more of a suggestion. I mean, if someone writes something on paper and submits it to you or to Shirley, I mean, it's got to be responded to. So it's more like a suggestion. If someone refuses to use the form, it's fine. But the purpose of the form, it's a suggestion because it has all the information. I'm sure the forms you've seen, your name, your phone number, your address, your email address, and that's so we know how to get it to you. If someone just shows up with a piece of paper to Shirley saying, hey, I want this document, okay, under the law we have to reply, but what if you got your email address wrong or anything could happen. So that form is there for a reason, but it's more suggestive than a mandate. Yeah, right. Right.
That's the only purpose of that form, because if you say what public record you want, and I don't think it asks much more than that. Your name, your phone number, your email, purpose, and this is a document.
Yeah, because I can tell you in my job, I've contacted, I don't know, I mean, it could be JA, who knows, and they will direct me. Hey, because sometimes I've just called the general number because I don't even know, there's some issue I need to figure out. I need to get documents for some legal action, and I'm not sure exactly the right department because JA has 100 departments. So I call a general number, hey, I need these documents. Okay, and they'll direct me, okay, go here and fill out this form, and then I'll go do it.
And they would have to be subject because they are to get through to the right people.
Right.
I don't know. I've never had a public record request, so I was just looking at it from a process and procedure point of view about 4 or 5 months ago because it came up for some reason. And that's what I learned then, but I never knew what you said, which is you could say to me, you want that, and that's a public record request. But I would have to say, I'll give it to Shirley.
Yeah, that, and actually, Hans, I did want to, from what I'm hearing from you, you're not seeing anything problematic on our form, on our website. Have you seen our website form?
Well, when I read through the statute, what I didn't do was have the statute up and then cross-check it, and maybe I should do that. I just haven't done that, but I've been on the website many a time.
Yeah.
And when I read through this, nothing stuck out as not being on there.
Okay.
But I can do that if you all.
Yeah, my only, and I don't know how many of the fields were required.
Yeah.
We asked a whole lot of information of the requester, which, to your point, if it's a suggestion that you fill it in versus a requirement, I wouldn't think we'd be in any trouble. But if we were requiring your name,
right,
and your phone number and your mailing address and all these other things, that's where I would wonder if we could get ourselves into trouble potentially.
To you if I don't have all that.
Yeah, I don't think there's any issue with that, but I can look into that.
What's the statute that goes with this? I wrote statute, but the number I missed.
For the website documents, 189.069.
Thank you.
I guess I have another question. So, I guess this is our policy now, this February.
Well, like a lot of documents that the past year that I've been representing you all, these just get sent to me, and I had no idea it was in existence. I think what Carl sent this. I think when he was making his request. I don't know. You talking about this one that says?
Where did this 2012 come from?
Yeah,
other than in my folder here. What
I think.
Do we know if it was?
If I recall, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. If I recall correctly, I think this was attached to one of Carl's emails where he was saying, "Hey."
It was.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that was the first I had seen
I
it.
thought I heard in the discussion here that we have the right to charge for costs and time. So if we get into a situation where we're getting multiple requests, then do we have the right to charge for Shirley's time?
Yeah, well, you have the right. I know you have the right to charge for the documents. Now, what goes into that charge, I can look into for you because I know that my office has had to pay. When I gave examples of requests I've made, so I know the statute allows you to charge. I can look in to see what fees go into that charge.
Yeah, I just see the opportunity here to amend the second bullet.
Well, if you look at it, it's on here.
Yeah, it's on there, it's on our website, and Tom, I won't talk for us, but I will talk for St. John's Water Management District. My instructions are, if I get a phone call and the request is gonna take more than 15 minutes of time, I'd be happy to help you. I'll put through a public records request, and they get invoiced for however much I think it's going to take for that time.
This one says that we're going to charge the hourly rate for secretary services paid by us. So I mean, it's pretty all laid out. It
Yeah,
says
so it's laid out, but I would think that we would be reasonable with that. If it takes 3 minutes, for sure I'll look up and forward an email. Versus, I gotta dig through she's gotta dig through paper records. That's gonna take an hour and a half, 2 hours of time. Yeah, exactly.
So I'm just trying to protect ourselves from.
But yes, if it's, she's not an open checkbook to the public.
But I don't know whether this is a standalone request or this is gonna start to show pattern of harassment.
Well, that's why you treat each one, again, if the first one they ask for an email and the second one they ask for a paper record, it's 2 different requests.
Yeah.
The first one's free, the second one, surely how long is it gonna take to dig through a record?
I have a question, Hans. If you take I'm thinking about this folder that has examples of the things that I find as wrong, that I have tried to get corrected unsuccessfully. And yet we're not talking about documents. Most of the requests that are somebody asking for something, but it's not necessarily a document, or it's asking a question. And Shirley has sent a lot of those to me because she doesn't know how to answer them, all right? And that's fine. But my problem was some of them she answers and she don't know how to answer them. So there should be, in my opinion, I mean, Matt said that Carl's thing that we just talked about was not a public record request. He's sure asking questions.
I think.
So is that not a public?
I think what Alden's asking is, how do you define, and I think I know the answer, but I'm not gonna put words in your mouth. How do we define a public record versus what's your opinion on this, or when are you guys gonna come up with a schedule for that? A public record versus a question. And I can throw my training out and you can shoot it down if you want, or feel free to answer it.
Well, I just for the record, I would say that he is the guy that we hired as a lawyer, and we should be counting on his expertise.
Absolutely.
Not any of us.
Well, I'm sure, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but I'm sure the definition of document is probably somewhere in chapter 119, which is the sunshine laws for public records. I don't have that memorized off the top of my head, but I mean, to answer your question generally, I mean, I think it's defined in the statute, and I can get that for you all. But it really just comes down to the content of what's being asked. If it's a record, I mean, a question is a question, but if it's requesting a record of information, then presumably that's in a document. Now, if it doesn't exist, I mean, either the document exists or the information exists in record form or it doesn't. I mean, if it doesn't, then there's no document to provide. You would say, well, we don't have that document, or there is no such document. So I think you just, honestly, it's a case-by-case basis where you just look at the content of the email or whatever it is. Are they just asking a question, or are they asking for a record of information, a tangible record of information, whether it's electronic or physical? And if it's the latter, then you look to see if you actually have such a thing or not. I mean, I hope I'm answering your question, because I don't think there's I don't think there's a magic answer to your question, because you got to know what the content of what's being asked.
Anyway, they still, in most cases, in these folders here, people want information, and they can get it. Okay, I mean, somebody, not necessarily Shirley, but me or somebody knows the information. But we probably should provide the information. but it needs to be, you mentioned in the process, the process change where the board and/or somebody should approve what she's responding to. And that's my problem, is because there's been some that Diane Potvin is aware of, even before she became a board member, dealing with an election. There's been some dealing with Tracy Wood, referencing Carl not being on the board anymore and not being a coordinator, so there's stuff here that is problematic.
I did not say Carl was not.
You said he was not the coordinator, he's not on the board.
I said he was no longer on the board.
Why'd you have to tell Tracy Wood that? See, that's Tracy is a damn safety officer,
It was in the EAP that you asked me to correct to make sure your name was on it so that you would get the phone calls instead of Mark. Well, what I have on my computer is...
Carl hadn't been the coordinator, and I couldn't tell you when.
It hasn't.
His name wasn't even listed in this last EAP that was in 2020 or 21.
It's on what I have on my computer, which you asked me.
Then you should have asked, instead of...
I contacted Tracy.
That's what I'm trying to avoid, is getting, excuse me. Who's doing that?
We can't understand what either one of you are saying.
Okay, I'm done with my comments. I said I would maintain composure, and I'm about to lose it, so I'm done. You got a comment?
Question, Hans, would you agree that all emails sent to or received a Lambda email address are public records?
Yes, and
would you agree that all documents, recordings, videos that are transmitted to or received by a Lambda member that have anything to do with business that we conduct, it's not rabbits in the wild or some nonsense like that, are public records?
Yeah, and I'll try to answer it even better. So you all may recall I provided you this tutorial on sunshine laws. So while this isn't the statute, always the source you want to go to is the statute, but I don't have all the statutes with me. My recollection of when I put this together, probably in April or May, I was just taking it from the statute. So it says public records are all materials made or received pursuant to a law or ordinance, or is made or received in connection with official business, and that are used to perpetuate, communicate, or formalize knowledge. They are not only limited to traditional written documents, but also tapes, photographs, films, sound recordings, electronic records such as emails and text messages. They are also considered public records subject to inspection unless an exemption exists. So it's basically any tangible, whether physical or electronic, record of information that has to do with the operations and business of the district.
So not necessarily I see Alton's point, his perspective of this individual's asking what we're going to do about something, what have we done about something. This document says something and he wants to correct it. That's more of a dialogue than a records request. Would you agree?
Yeah, well, so are we talking about Carl's email that we're not sure what that is? Is that what we're talking about?
I'm not necessarily talking about, Alton said he's got a stack of files of requests that aren't necessarily for documents, but they're asking for answers to questions.
Well, I got them.
Right. Well, I guess the way I would advise responding to those, if you get, let's say Shirley gets an email and it's got some content to it and you're not sure if they're just asking questions, if they're requesting documents, you can respond as such. And like I said, the penalties are for refusal or for knowingly withholding. And so if you're not sure that it's a request, then you're not doing either. So maybe you want to clarify, is there a specific document you're asking for, or are you just asking a question?
Would you be opposed to us if we're not sure if it's a public records request, just send it to you for clarification. Hey, Hans, it's
Sure.
a public
No,
records request.
that's what I'm here for.
And if it's not a public records request, you guys can answer between yourselves all you want, or not answer it, or
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah.
All that matters is that we are responsive to public records requests.
That's right. The sunshine laws only deal with open meetings and public records, not necessarily questions.
We have to give the right response to the people that are asking them. That's my point. So I would strongly suggest that we change whatever policy that may be in existence and not let Shirley just respond without somebody on the board approving the response. And a lot of times it's worked fine because she didn't know. She asked me. I wrote the response in red ink underneath their questions and sent it back to her for her to distribute it back to whoever asked for it. And that was fine. So some of the times it's worked great. Some of the times it ain't worked worth crap.
We could institute a process similar to the Board of County Commissioners whereby as we get questions during the course of the month, those are all answered in an open meeting forum.
Brought to the attention at the next board
Yep,
meeting.
and just send an email. Thank you for your questions. They will be answered at our next board meeting.
Which is not dissimilar from the forms that are out there that say, if you've got a question, write it here, or send your question to the district secretary, and then they'll all be addressed at the next public meeting.
And this way, we get it to the area expert that needs to go to.
Yeah, so
No harm, no foul.
if I could chime in, Chairman,
Absolutely.
I think that's a good suggestion because really then you break it down into 3 responses. If you get something and you truly think it's a question, then your response is, thank you, I'll forward this to the trustees for consideration at the next open meeting. If it's a clear documents request, then your response is, this acknowledges your records request, we will follow up with you. And then if you're not sure, if you're not sure, then you might want to default to it being a question, And so you say, okay, well, thank you for your email. I'll forward your question to the trustees for consideration at the next open meeting. If you meant to request a specific document, please specify, something like that. And that's really your 3 responses, and that makes your job easier. That's just a suggestion.
And always respond.
And then she could forward that
No,
to
I'm not saying
Alden.
no.
Alden could take the time from then until the next meeting or until 2 meetings after, because we're not obligated to answer the question. He's doing a courtesy to the individual by following up and providing information, but that's not statutorily required.
Well, honestly, Matt, I mean, your point, yeah, and so that's what the open meeting's for.
Yes.
And so that's why the sunshine laws govern 2 things, documents requests and open meetings, because that's really the spirit of it is, hey, public, if you have a question, come to our meeting and ask it. And that could be the response if you get a question in writing.
So maybe that should be our process instead of the chairman feeling obligated to answer these questions, taking his personal time doing it, kick the can to the public meeting.
I agree with that. Because, folks, let's be honest, it just takes one misstep of one word to get us into hot water. Just one moment of just, not wordsmithing yourself properly, and all heck can reign supreme. This way, if we're answering these questions in a public forum, we've got all of each other, and we've got the right answers.
Yeah, similarly, I think there was, in one of these requests, there was, well, what about the schedule, which is like, we're supposed to answer specifically. If we're not ready to answer, we just say the schedule is still being developed, and that's the end of it.
At the public meeting, though, we have no requirement to answer
at
the
public
next
meeting.
day or within a week or anything.
And that kind of falls in line with the spirit of this. It says, reasonably possible. You don't have to answer it the next day.
No, but I mean, that's not even a public records request. If we answer that at all, we're doing him a public service or her or whatever.
Because we have a rhythm with our business. It's a monthly meetings, and people should be able to respect that.
And the benefit of doing that, of having all the questions collected and brought to the next board meeting, is that when they're answered, they're now answered in the minutes, and then they'll be posted.
And there's open forum, and people get to hear. I think it's a wonderful suggestion, and on behalf of myself, I will tell you that I think Shirley has done a magnificent job for us over the last several months. She's put our records in order. We can actually find things now, and she gets it out timely. So on my behalf, I would like to say thank you for your work.
I'm right with Carol. Shirley, you've done a great job. You've kept the communication rolling. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, so I'd like to make a motion that we follow Hans's advice and establish a protocol for the secretary to follow when she receives an email asking a question. And there are 3 responses. Number 1 is, I understand that you're asking for a public record. I will get back to you. I will provide the public record. Let me look it up, or et cetera, et cetera. If you have any questions that you don't understand what the public record is, I'm asking Shirley. If you don't understand what it is, or you think there may be exceptions or anything like that, that's what Hans is for. That's his job.
If I could interject here, like I'd be interrupting you, so I don't have to. If you want to.
No, go ahead.
You're still asking her to interpret responding, and the board is going to not know that request was even made. I think that the board has to know
absolutely
the requests that are made and what our response is, and should approve it before it takes place.
Maybe that should be something that's put on the agenda each month. Public records request, maybe not put the person's name to respect their anonymity, but.
I appreciate the sentiment, but my concern is, Hans, tell me if I'm wrong here. If we wait a month to respond with something as simple as, I want the report, are we in are we in troubled water that we're not responding timely?
Well, if it's a document, you shouldn't wait until the meeting. Is that what you're asking me? If it's a document? But yeah.
So we're considering.
Yeah.
Janet mentioned, okay, let's discuss it at the next meeting. We can vote up or down on whether it's doing it. But if it's
no, I'm sorry. That's not what I meant. I just meant a running tab for each meeting, maybe attached to the agenda, maybe not even covered in the agenda, but for our knowledge base, that we had this public record request, this one on this date we had this request, this date we had this request.
I misunderstood.
A running thing
That's
for
perfect.
each and every month.
Yeah, we need to know.
And that formalizes it as okay, we received the following records requests.
Yep, and they were all taken care of, and
No,
And
that's
this
good.
way it's documented.
But Baldwin still has the concern of, okay, Shirley has a public records request. I'm with him as far as the board needs to know about it. Where I deviate slightly is I don't know how we can approve it as a board outside of a public meeting, and I don't know how we can wait until a public meeting to fulfill a request that's as simple as I want a report. And I'm open to suggestion for how to do that.
Okay, we have this conundrum, okay? We want to let the trustees know that there's been a public request.
I think does anybody disagree with that statement?
No.
We're all on board with that.
Okay, so we're all trustees, we all want to know. And the other one was a question. Shirley can answer a question, but if she puts an email out to all of us that says, have a public records request, this is it, I'm sending that out. I have a question. Can we answer this in next open forum?
Correct.
And I don't know what the other one was.
The other one was, I'm not sure if this is a question or a public records
Yeah.
request. And
So
if
that's a Hans question.
Well, that's a tangible document, like you said.
Well, a document's a document.
But you're asking a question, you're not asking for a document.
No. That's just a question.
Correct, but I mean, let's just say a theoretical email that asks for something and she's not sure if it's a written document or if it's just an answer off the top of someone's head based on reports that they've seen and this, that, and the other. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Not really.
Oh, well,
Somebody's gonna call and ask to get a request of a document, you know, can I get the minutes?
Well, let's just say that Shirley as a human being might not know in a particular instance if it's a general question that we can handle in the public forum or whether it's a public records request. I don't know what that email would look like, but I'm just saying there's a possibility that she may not understand what it is.
It would look something like this, because I get these requests.
Oh, yeah.
It would look something like, is there a report from December 5th that pertains to your meetings? Is that a question, or they want the documents?
They're asking for the minutes.
Are they though? Is there a document? Because the question is there, you know, English teacher in me, is there a document? The answer is a simple yes. But probably from their interpretation, they are wanting the document that refers to the minutes.
Yes, and I refer you to
So here's what I'm envisioning, and I'll restate my motion in a moment. But Alton, what I'm thinking is we greenlight Shirley to go down one of those three rabbit holes of here's your public record, or I'm going to forward your question to the board. They'll get to it at the next meeting, or I'm not sure, I'll get back to you. In which case, she gets with Hans and they determine whether it's a public records request or not, and then they go down one of the other two avenues. Okay? If she mistakenly believes that something is a public record and she provides something and it is wrong, she's going to notify the board anyway that it's a public records request and I responded in the following way. If we see that surely that really wasn't a public records request, this is the answer we need to give them, we can follow up with the requester at that time.
All right, my question is, if we do that, and she goes to Hans, and Hans charges $50, does that $50, does the person requesting that document have to pay $50 before we give the document? She has to respond to them, okay, I can get it for you, but it's gonna cost you $50. Right? Who's gonna absorb this?
There's a time structure, right?
Yeah, you can't go to Hans all the time, he's paid by the hour.
Aren't we really saying we need to revisit
So you
this
just
document?
incurred an expense.
Well, let me just say this, if I can. I mean, the spirit of what's going on is that if the secretary knows what document's being requested and knows where it's at, then the secretary should just provide it and notify the trustees. If she doesn't, then that's when she can ask. So not everything has to come to me. I know there's certain things you can charge for, but it's not going to be my fees. I mean, that's not going to be in the statute. I mean, as far as passing down the cost to whoever's the public who's requesting, I mean, it's going to be probably time for recovering the records if they're difficult to find and copying charges, things like that. I don't think within that statute it includes any attorney's fees, but I mean, that's the way it's supposed to work. It's supposed to be the request goes to the secretary, and the secretary is supposed to respond so long as the secretary knows what's being requested and where the document's at.
I think you will be aware of it.
Yeah, right.
And since we're all going to be in the loop on all of these moving forward, if we see a problem, the next monthly meeting we move on.
It might really be interesting to see if there's a particular document or a particular topic that's being requested over and over and over again.
And then throw it
by
on the website.
by multiple people. Absolutely.
Yeah.
The only thing like that recently has been the fees for the 2,400 or the 2 lots and the lot and a half and stuff like that. But let's take Carl's, the one that's caused all this crap, Carl's email. Carl asked for, and I'll stick with that, I'll try to leave the politics out of it. Carl asked for the document for Hanson's proposal, all right? The only email that had that proposal on it also had 2 other documents on there, and that was the proposal from the subcontractors to Hanson. So I asked to see what was sent to Carl, and I have yet to see that. I know she sent me a deal that said Carl asked for, this is what he asked for.
I kind of told you what I sent him.
No, you
I
didn't.
sent him yes, I did. I sent him the amendment.
Okay, but let me
what
clarify.
he asked for.
You weren't just, you're saying you were just asking for a copy of what was sent. You weren't asking
Exactly.
for, there's nothing wrong with that. That's in that
I
case.
asked specifically, and this is not the only one, I asked specifically to send me the email you sent Carl that addressed his request.
Okay,
And I ain't got that.
Yeah, in which case
That way I would know, did she get 3 documents or just the one document that we're talking about here?
Yeah, that makes complete sense. The reason I sent the email is I misread that, and my concern is that there may have been an approval process for public records, where if you get hit by a bus and she's left hanging for a week, we've got an open public records request that's not being filled. That's a concern for me.
That's not what your email said.
Okay.
And I'm trying to stay calm here, but that's not what your email said at all. Go back and read. You want me to put it up there?
You can do whatever you'd like to do.
I'm not going to. I could. I started to. I'm not going to.
Okay, so I'd like.
Were you saying something, Larry?
What?
I just, only comment I got is, I don't want to see the secretary reporting anything other than the minutes that we get to review without the consent. I don't care what it is. You have all kind of scenarios as to what if this, what if that. She doesn't report anything without the chairperson. And if you need more, you don't like just the chairperson telling her what she can and can't do, then pick out another member of the committee to have him communicate with her before he tells her what to say. Outside of that, I don't want to report anything to anybody.
No.
Well, we have
problem with that.
Public records request.
We have to follow the law.
Sunshine law.
Do we need to revisit this policy?
I'm not
It sounds to me like it's not clear.
A record that is not made public to everyone. That's not what we're talking about. This came up when Carl asked for the records of the new contract, correct?
The proposed amendment, yes.
Yeah, phase 1B.
Okay, is there something else, an issue other than what I read Sunday, what Matt reported?
No.
I don't think so.
Okay, then why are you trying to make something difficult? She doesn't report anything unless it is something from the minutes or just because he requested that. That doesn't mean he gets it. Is that wrong or right? You tell me.
Well, if he requests a document, I think he gets it. We'll let Hans comment.
Yeah, I mean, maybe I misunderstood, or,
Hold on a second. Did Matt instruct Alton that he didn't need a copy of it because he could get it on the internet? And he could pull it up himself. Is that right, Matt?
Can you repeat that, please?
Well, see, my point is, if Carl wanted this, we didn't have to provide it for him. He could pull it up on the internet.
No, it wasn't available on. It still is not available on the. Are you talking about the amendment?
What Carl was requesting.
Well, Carl was requesting was the amendment, correct?
1B.
Yes.
1B. Are you talking about 1B?
Yes.
That's not available on the
Whatever
website.
was Carl requested.
That's a legitimate public records request that must be fulfilled timely.
It wasn't legitimate because he put the wrong date on it.
How about moving forward, we put all emails on the website?
If I may.
Who?
Eliminate
He
the problem.
requested information from November, and the information from November is what he got. He later came back and requested the amendment. that was talked about at the Monday night meeting.
Okay, so moving forward, we put all the emails up there, or all the documents that come in, 1B, 1C, just pull all of them, what there's.
I don't necessarily, I like that spirit.
Yeah.
There may be a storage issue if we put everything up.
Well, there's not gonna be that many minutes, you know?
Oh, those documents, I thought you were talking about all emails that we ever send anyway. I mean, that,
would cause people, oh, you get the structure.
I agree that we should have put that up. But the decision was made not to, and maybe that's something that we should, well, now that we passed it, presumably we will put it up, but we should put that up immediately. Correct.
Well, so right now, at this moment, who contacts Darla to put something on the website? What's the process?
Well,
Okay.
Yeah.
But she's told by somebody to do it.
Exactly.
I've told her things to put on the website, and even in this case, we had never in the past put that on the website. I'm not saying that was right or wrong, until it got through this board, okay? And maybe that needs to change. But when I I asked her when she sent, I forget the details now, but I told her that this is not to be put on the, when I sent it to all of y'all,
Yeah.
that's when it was, because I copied her on it. I said, it's not to be put on the website yet.
But it wasn't.
If you got an email on Friday, you get it on Saturday, have a meeting on Monday, whatever we talk about on Monday, we should tell her, yeah, you need to post that.
Tell what?
Whatever, like the amendment that you got on Friday, gave us on Saturday, we need to have a meeting on Monday.
Say all proposed contracts.
So you say Monday, sure, we have a meeting, sure, we can post that.
Because it's not like we're bidding contractors for this. We have a sole source contractor. We have a proposed contract with them.
It eliminates.
Then this is all I can have.
More transparency.
And the fact that we have a monthly meeting is a reasonable time, or what's the language of the law? I mean, does this have to happen the next day?
Well, we're talking about two different things. One is responding to records requests, and the other is what you put on the internet, on the website. Responding to records requests just needs to be done timely. I mean, there's no set deadline, it just needs to be done timely. And that could, depending on the document, could be a couple hours or it could be a week, depending on the document. I told you what the statute said, and I don't mind sending that out to you as far as what has to be on the website. Mm-hmm. Everything above that, I mean, I'm out of that. I mean, that's up to you all to decide. And you know, I'm telling you what has to be on the website. Anything above that. So the Hansen documents do not have to be on the website. If you want to put them on there, that's fine. If they're not on there, no one can say it's a violation of anything. But it just depends on.
If we want to avoid our own headaches, that's what we're discussing.
And we've done that, but we've done it after we approved the proposal.
But I think what the spirit that we're discussing is, if it's something the board is to consider, the public, in my opinion, deserves to have an informed input into that process in the form of public opinion, and they can't offer that without the proposal.
They become just as bad off as we were when we got it one day with the expectation that we were going to approve it. They need to have what we're going to be talking about and putting money to. They need to have that document. It'll take them a while to read it too. And then when we ask for public opinion in here, we get it from an informed public, not somebody that had a moment to look at a document.
So I think we're going in circles a little bit. Let's try and get the hell out of here. I'd like to make a motion that moving forward, all Hansen proposed documents, all Hansen proposed contracts, 1B, 2, 3, 4, get added to the website as soon as reasonable, so that the public has an opportunity to review them before a pending meeting.
That's gonna make it, that's a delay. That's gonna be a delay. Yeah, because
Goes back.
when we get the document, and what if we didn't get the document until a week before the meeting. Then we post it 2 days after that. I don't know how fast y'all get posted. You know, then the public has 3 days to run show up.
Then either we review it at that meeting or we don't review it at that meeting. If we only get 2 days notice or a week's notice, I mean, we're supposed to notice the public a week on what we discuss anyway. It's supposed to say, Hanson 1B document for consideration, not just Hanson update. So, I mean, the idea is that if we get it 2 weeks ahead of time, we have a little bit more time to review it, put it on the website, and go through the whole process.
Kind of point of order, there was no second on this motion. There shouldn't be any discussion, or it dies on the floor.
What was the motion?
The motion was that moving forward, for all Hanson amendments, all Hanson future proposed contracts to be considered, that we add it to the website as soon as reasonable.
Isn't that a different statement than what the 3 objectives we had in our meeting were for the agenda? We're way off of base now, I think. I don't have a problem with what you just said, but we're not. We had a special meeting to cover these 3 things, and we've covered them. Now you're into something different. So that's not even in order. Doesn't matter whether it's a great thing to do or not. I don't have a problem with doing that. I told you what we're going to do going forward is Hanson is going to present these proposals, not me. And that makes more sense. I don't know why we didn't do that in the first place, because the last 2 proposals that have been made have run into the crash because Hanson wasn't here to answer whatever questions came up.
Presumably, they're going to send us that in advance, and that's what.
Well, and he said that. All right, he knew that, but he was trying his best to get negotiated with different subcontractors and not just take the high guy that came in first. So, but going forward, that's fine.
Forward, just because we've already got time.
Do I have a second? Second. Thank you.
Well, okay. Any more comments or discussion? I don't have a problem with it. It ain't worth arguing about. But it's out of order with what the agenda was for this special meeting. That's my point. It's out of order for this special meeting. But you made the motion, you got a second, any more discussion? All right, all in favor, right hand. All right, opposed? Okay, it carried, so we'll add that to it'll be done. Now.
What about Larry?
Larry, did you stick your hand up or not?
Did you vote,
What was
Larry?
that? What was that?
Just say yeah, just say aye.
Say aye.
No, I'm not.
Okay. So you're a no.
8-1.
All right. We're recording a no.
Okay, I don't know exactly where we're at.
If you give me clarification on what the motion was, then I'll know what I'm voting for.
Would you want to restate that, Matt? It's for Larry's.
I couldn't hear what he said.
He wanted clarification so he could properly vote.
It passed anyway, Larry.
It's going to pass anyway, so
Okay, good enough.
it's a moot point, I think. I don't know how
All right.
that falls into Robert's Rules of Orders, but I don't know.
That's fine.
So we still have this process for public information requests, and I would suggest that since Hans has done the research on it, he would give us some kind of guidelines and/or proposal for us to consider at our January meeting, so that we can study it between now and then vote on it. But
I'm good with that.
That makes sense.
all right. So that was my motion. So I made that motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second. Any more discussion? All right. All in favor?
All right.
Aye, Larry?
Hear that one, Larry?
No, what was that one? Alton's breaking up. You're not. I don't understand that.
Yeah.
Okay, the motion is that Hans, since he's done research on this process for addressing public information requests, that he would draft a proposal to us to consider adopting in our January meeting.
Okay.
You got it, Diane? Yes, sir. Okay. Unless Hans objects to that.
That's an aye?
Aye.
No,
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
All right. So do we need to revote?
Let's do it.
All right, revote. All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Larry says aye too.
So it passed 9-0.
I said aye.
I'll make one other motion. I make a motion, we adjourn this meeting.
Second, third, fourth.
All right.
Aye.
All right, thank you.